Hello and welcome to a new episode of Nile TV's Newsroom, live here from the studio. And my name is Dina Hussein, and in the program of Nile TV's Newsroom Live, we bring to you right where you are the latest about politics, about economy, and the world of sports, and also technology, and all what's happening around the world, the latest happenings. Also, we're going to bring you the latest about what's happening in the world of culture, and you name it. And we're going to go to a short break and we'll come back to you, so stay with us. Welcome back. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held a joint press conference with visiting Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev following their talks in Cairo on Tuesday. More details in the following report.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held a joint press conference with the visiting Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev following their talks in Cairo on Tuesday. The Sisi said he highly values historical brotherly ties between the two countries, adding that Egypt is the first country that acknowledged Uzbekistan's independence and established diplomatic ties with it. He said the talks discussed expanding ties in 9 promising fields. He added the talks also focused on the need to swiftly activate the Joint Cooperation Committee between the two sides. Sisi said they agreed over a 2-state proposal to solve the Palestinian-Israeli crisis. For his part, the Uzbek president expressed his appreciation for the hospitality he received in Egypt. He said the talks witnessed a shared vision over the new republic in Egypt. He added they both agreed to solidify cooperation in security and logistical fields to fight terrorism. The President added that Egyptian and Uzbek people share the same religion and culture, and they've agreed to cooperate in the field of education. Ahead of the press conference, Sisi and his counterpart witnessed the signing of a number of agreements and memorandums of understanding in the trade and investment arena, industry, health, and foreign affairs. Presidential spokesperson Councillor Ahmed Fahmy earlier said the president held talks with his Uzbek counterpart, who arrived earlier on Monday in Cairo, aiming to enhance bilateral relations and expand trade, investment, and economic cooperation in the upcoming period. Fahmy added the talks aim to coordinate over several regional and international issues of mutual concern. Diplomatic ties between the two countries were established in 1992, and the Egyptian embassy in Uzbekistan was opened in 1993.
To be joined over the phone live by His Excellency Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, his former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good evening. I guess we just don't have the phone right now, and we're going to move on to the next item. And as soon as we retrieve His Excellency Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi over the phone. Right now we have with us live over the phone Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, our political analyst. Good evening, Dr. Ghaffar.
Good evening, my dear.
How are you doing, sir?
Fine, fine. And yourself?
We were talking about the visit of Uzbek president over to Cairo today, where he met with the head of state, His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. How do you assess the timing of the visit by the Uzbek president to Cairo?
Well, I mean, President al-Sisi has a conviction to extend excellent relation with all countries all around the world, particularly in this area. I mean, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, etc., etc. He himself visited them a few years ago, and then he met the president in different endeavors and meetings and conventions and what have you. So the relation between the two head of states heads of state are excellent, and the relation between the two countries is excellent. And the exchange of visits is very important to increase and enhance the bilateral commercial relation and the political, of course, relation between the two countries. So the timing is adequate, particularly that, as we all know, the world is facing crisis after crisis, and it's the time to join hands with friends and friendly countries to try and work something out to overcome the crises that we are facing.
True, it's very much true. Also, in the joint communique that took place between the two leaders, they stressed over the importance of implementing bilateral relation, or forming a form of implementation for the bilateral relations as a foundation for that. So, how do you read it?
I see that the commercial relations between the two countries, the bilateral commercial relation between the countries, is still, in terms of figures, reasonably small. So it can be increased tremendously, and I think that we both, I'm talking about the two countries, we have the will to increase this relation in so many venues. So we signed different memorandum of understanding and different protocols, etc., in different, as I said,
on different
domains.
fronts.
In my humble opinion, I think that Egypt is becoming a very appealing destination for the tourists coming from this area, and I think that this is a file that can really be very promising, and I think they have talked about that. And this is one of the things that is worth considering very highly between the two countries.
Right. President Sisi said the talks discussed expanding ties, and he focused on 9 promising fields. How important is it for the two sides to strengthen the ties for trade, for investment, for education and health fields, and also fighting terrorism, and also fighting climate change, and you mentioned also tourism. So talk to us about the importance of strengthening the ties and forming a sort of a partnership in those 9 fields.
I mean, as I said earlier, the whole world is facing very big challenges, and no country, no matter how big or mighty or strong it is, can face it alone. So we have to get together, we have to cooperate, and we have to fight confront, at least I should say, all these challenges. You mentioned climate change, which is a big menace and big threat to our planet. So we can't fight it alone. We have to join forces as much as we can. You are talking a lot of other issues, and the most important thing is that we use the resources that are available. For instance, if we're talking bilateral relation with Uzbekistan, the resources that are available in Uzbekistan, and make use of them in Egypt, and vice versa. We can pick up the things in which we excel or they excel and joint venture in it. And this is how we are going to develop, and this is how we are going to strengthen our bilateral relations.
Right. Mr. Ghaffar, we are living in a time where economic partnerships are replacing the political partnership or political development. Digitalization and technology is replacing military confrontation. We're living at a time where health, maintaining the health of a nation is much more important than other priorities. So the priorities of the world has changed. And probably this is going to prioritize the common fields of partnership between the two countries. Absolutely. If you like to talk about that.
Absolutely. as you rightly said, the world is now going into the direction of maximizing the human rights and trying to give the human being a much, much bigger value. And as you rightly said, we are moving into an era of computerization, of digitalization, of artificial intelligence. I mean, these are areas that did not exist 50 or 40 or maybe 30 years ago. But they existed, they now exist, and they are dominating the whole world. So it is a new era. We have to get ready to it, and we have to join forces in order to catch up with the leading countries in these different endeavors, and not to let the chance go. And because if we can't start where they finished and try and catch up with them, then the gap will be too big. That's why we have to join forces and join hands and make all resources available in order to create a sort of alignment, a sort of groupment, a sort of coalition between the different countries so that we can, as I said, confront all the challenges that you mentioned which are facing us.
Right. There were, like you kindly mentioned, there were talks about trade exchange, there were talk about industry partnership, humanitarian development that is effected on both sides, and also the educational fields, development over the educational fields. And there were memorandum of understandings that were signed in those fields between the two countries. If you'd like to elaborate.
Once again, we talked about the transformation of the world into an era of digitalization, an era of very, very highly sophisticated technology. And this cannot be reached or even practiced without education. So the issue of education is becoming a most important issue. And without training, continuous training and continuous education, we will not be able to go any further. So, as you rightly said, now the whole world is directing himself into more and more training and more very specialized education. So, for countries that still have some illiteracy or the education level is not up to the standard to cope with the huge changes that are occurring, this has to change. And signing memorandum of understanding in these issues mean that we are serious in our development and in cooperating toward a better country for Egypt and Uzbekistan.
A very important gesture was taken by the Uzbek president as he expressed his full realization of the important role that is played by the religious institution Al-Azhar and also the Egyptian church in creating tolerance, in creating awareness, religious awareness, especially at a time religion is used by some military mercenaries and some militants to tarnish the face of Islam and Christianity and other religions. So if you like to focus over this.
Sure. I mean, thank God Egypt is now, nowadays, I mean today, has reached a level of stability and understanding between all relations. Fanatism is starting to disappear. Of course, terrorism, thank God, is now almost vanishing, thanks to the efforts, of course, of police and military, etc., etc. But as you said, the reason why this kind of fanatism exists and flourish is ignorance. And once you concentrate on education,
of course, and awareness at the same time.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
But education comes first. Now people will be more aware of what is right and what is wrong, what to listen to and what not to listen to, and they will understand by themselves what is really better for their own life, for their own future, and for their own country.
Exactly. Mr. Raouf Ghaffar, the political analyst, would like to thank you so much for talking to us here in Nile TV's newsroom. And we're going to go to a short break and we'll come to continue the program, so stay with us. Break. Welcome back. Under directives from President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, an Egyptian Navy supply ship loaded with hundreds of tons of humanitarian aid arrived at Syria's Latakia port. The aid will help in rescue and support operations for victims of the devastating earthquake that rocked both Syria and Turkey 2 weeks ago. Presidency spokesman Councillor Ahmed Fahmy said gestures out of solidarity with Syria and its people in this painful disaster. Also, the Egyptian Red Crescent said it had sent 200 tons of relief supplies in urgent aid to Syria as the first batch of aid. A statement said that the aid, which was delivered to the Syrian Red Crescent, was presented by the Egyptian people who rushed to provide donations soon after the February 6 earthquake. It also added that 2 more aid convoys were under preparations and will be sent in coordination with the Syrian Red Crescent. Also, meanwhile, 2 weeks after devastating earthquakes, Turkey stepped up work to clear away rubble from the collapsed buildings on Monday as rescue work wound up. And also, the major earthquakes killed more than 46,000 people in southern Turkey and northwest Syria, with the death toll in Turkey hitting 41,020. The deaths are expected to climb, with some 385,000 apartments in the country known to have been destroyed or seriously damaged, and many more people still missing amid freezing temperatures. Meanwhile, the UN Reproductive Health Agency, UNFPA, said that among survivors of the February 6 earthquakes in Turkey and Syria are about 356,000 pregnant women who urgently need access to reproductive health services, with about 38,800 of whom delivering in the next months. Welcome back once again, and we're very delighted to be having with us live over the phone His Excellency Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good evening, Ambassador Bayoumi.
Good evening, how are you?
Fine, thank you so much, sir. And let me start off with you about the devastating situation that is taking place in Syria and Turkey, and upon the directives of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, aid was immediately sent by Egypt generously to our brothers in Syria and also to Turkey. So if you like to elaborate on that step.
Of course, we wouldn't hesitate to help our brothers, whether in Syria or Turkey. Mind you that you are talking to an old ambassador who was holding a passport of the Arab Republic, the United Arab Republic, which was one country of Syria and Egypt. When I joined the diplomacy, we were one country by that time. So
exactly.
I cannot count how many times I was in Damascus or Halab or many places in Syria. They are our brothers. And if you look around yourself in the streets, plenty of Syrians are our guests now. Many of them are well off, and they came to even invest in Egypt because they are suffering from the war in Syria, and now this earthquake, which is adding miserable development all the Syrians. So I see it's not a gift, it's our duty to help them immediately and to make sure that all this aid is going everywhere in Syria, to every Syrian brother in every place in Syria. Of course, the war is making our task more difficult. The war is not only against Turkey or others, but also it's between Syria and Syria. So we hope that this miserable situation will bring the Syrians at the end as one united people and one united country.
Of course, and it's worth mentioning that it's not the first time that Egypt is taking that leading role inside the region and even worldwide, ever since President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi have stepped his feet into office. We remember the important role Egypt have played, especially with this aid issue. I mean, sending aid to Lebanon, sending even aid to some countries in Africa in crisis, and sending aid to Sudan, sending aid to Syria before, and other countries. So talking about Egypt retaining its leading role even before or with the start of Egypt earlier assuming the chairmanship of the African Union. How do you assess the role of Egypt in the region in light of what's happening?
I want to make it quite clear that we are there all the time. We are not absent at all. What was absent is the level of the presidency, because before 10 years before the revolution of 2011, we were lacking in our diplomacy the presidential level, because our president by that time was a little bit sick, and they were trying to attack him in Addis Ababa. So it was the presidential diplomacy was freeze for more than 10 years by that time. Now we have a very active president, and I was happily surprised when I heard that he talked to the presidents of Iran and to President al-Assad of Syria on the phone to assure them that, of course, our sympathy and that we are there to help them whenever we are needed. And the Egyptian presence is quite clear. Look around yourself in Cairo. You will discover that Cairo is becoming the most populated city in the world by embassies. We have the utmost number of embassies anywhere in the world. Why? Because we are important. We are very we are in the middle of everything. We are a leader in the Group 77, which is combined of 139 countries. We are the leader, one of the leaders of Africa, 55 countries. We are the top in the Arab world, 22 countries. So it's not a joke at all. And it's quite clear for a diplomat like me, myself, that every big power, whether it is Europe, America, China, Russia, wouldn't think to approach the Middle East or the Arab world or Africa without consulting with Egypt, without taking Egypt in its mind.
Right.
So let us hope that this tragedy will get an end soon, and we are all with our hearts and with all our efforts with our brothers in Syria. Hopefully, and our brothers also in Turkey.
Hopefully, inshallah. Finally, Your Excellency, we all know that during that major earthquake that hit Turkey and Syria, the deaths have rose to 46,000 people, and there are lots of damage, and buildings have collapsed, and people, pregnant women, are left on the streets, and they need health aid immediately, and even children, elderly people. So, how much of aid is required by the international community, and also most importantly, how much of an interference by the international community in that situation? Where do you see the role of international community?
We need unlimited help. And thank God that I didn't heard any single country who is against helping Syria or Turkey. Unfortunately, a couple of hours ago, I was talking to an Arab television, and there was some Syrians are against us helping their country. Why? Because it will the help will go to the Assad regime. This is a bad way of thinking. I am sending our help to everybody in Syria, and I am making sure that it will reach every single house who needs our help.
Exactly. Your Excellency, Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, would like to thank you, sir, talking to us. And we're going to go to a short break, and we'll come to continue the program, so stay with us. Welcome back. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry delivered a speech on behalf of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi before the African Union as it wrapped up its 36th annual summit in Addis Ababa. In this word, Shoukry said that the conflicting parties in Africa ought to stick to African solutions for the crisis in the continent. The minister said the remarks during the session held to be discussed the report over the activities of the AU Peace and Security Council. And spokesman of the Foreign Ministry, Ambassador Ahmed Abu Said, said the Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry started the speech with a reference to the fact that African Summit is held this year in international and regional critical circumstance, which required more cooperation in the face of the current security challenges. Shoukry also put stress over priorities of the African joint work to secure achieving security and also peace for the countries of the continent, including unifying efforts to combat the conflict that is taking place in Africa. And U.S. President Joe Biden met with his Polish counterpart Andrzej Duda in Warsaw on Tuesday as he began a series of consultations with allies from NATO's eastern flank to prepare for an even more complicated stage of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Biden, fresh from a visit to Kiev, was sent to reaffirm to U.S. allies on Tuesday that the U.S. is squarely behind Ukraine and committed to bolstering NATO's eastern flank as the anniversary of Russia's invasion nears. Last March, Biden delivered a forceful and highly personal condemnation of Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Royal Castle just weeks after the start of the war. Biden arrived in Warsaw on Monday after paying an unannounced visit to Kiev on a mission to solidify Western unity as both Ukraine and Russia, they prepare to launch spring offensives. The conflict has already left tens of thousands of people dead, devastated Ukraine's infrastructure system, and damaged the global economy. Biden is expected to highlight the commitment of Poland and other allies to Ukraine over the past year when he delivers an address from the gardens of Warsaw's Royal Castle. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said the Royal Castle speech would be vintage Joe Biden and that Democratic president would lay out that the action democracies take in the coming years will have reverberations for years to come. Putin also announced that Moscow would suspend its preparation and last remaining nuclear arms control pact with the U.S. The so-called New START treaty caps the number of long-range nuclear warheads they can deploy and limits the use of missiles that can carry atomic weapons. And Russian rockets slammed into a busy streets in the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson on Tuesday, killing at least 6 people as Vladimir Putin delivered a speech marking a year of war in Ukraine. The military said 12 others were wounded in the attack, which a Reuters correspondent said left a pool of blood in the pavement beside the heavily damaged bus stop. The blast also badly damaged a line of shop fronts behind the bus stop, took down power cables and shattered windows on the opposite side of the street. Video released by the regional administration showed corpses lying in the street. Local authorities said Kherson, it came under fire from multiple rocket launchers as the Russian president delivered a speech describing the West as the aggressor in Ukraine and depicting his country as not waging war against the Ukrainian people. Russia did not immediately comment on the events of Kherson, and Moscow has denied deliberately targeting civilians in its special military operation. But cities across Ukraine have been devastated in missile and drone attacks, and thousands of civilians have been killed. The city Kherson and surrounding areas are now under almost constant bombardment from Russian forces on the opposite side of the Dnipro River. North Korea said it had test-fired an intercontinental ballistic missile as a warning to Washington and Seoul, saying that the successful surprise drill demonstrated Pyongyang's capacity to launch a fatal nuclear counterattack. In response, Seoul said that the U.S. and South Korea staged joint air drills featuring a strategic bomber and stealth fighter jets. Tokyo's defense ministry said the U.S. and Japan also held a joint military drill. Japan said the missile flew for 66 minutes before splashing down in its exclusive economic zone. And President Lula da Silva flew to tour to the resort region turned disaster zone where floods and landslides killed at least 36 people, just as Brazil celebrated Carnival, where dozens were still missing. Rescue workers were rushing to find any survivors buried under the mud and rubble before it was too late. After 24 hours of record rain over the weekend that devastated the area around the popular coastal city of São Sebastião, around 200 kilometers southeast of Sao Paulo. Lula da Silva's office released a video of him flying in a helicopter over the area where landslides triggered by the torrential downpours swept away at least 50 homes. Brown flood waters could be seen engulfing houses just inland from the emerald waters of the region's pristine coastline. Nearly 1,000 people were evacuated, while 747 others lost their homes. And now it's time for a thorough outlook over the business news everywhere. Minister of International Cooperation Rania Al-Mashat participated in a roundtable that is chaired by President of Uzbekistan and Egyptian businessmen. The roundtable was held after conclusion of the Egyptian-Uzbek Business Forum. And in her speech, Al-Mashat welcomed Uzbekistan President, stressing the depths of relation between the two countries and Egypt's aspiration for more joint work. She highlighted the importance of enhancing trade and investment cooperation between Egypt and Uzbekistan. The roundtable is part of the activities of the first visit of an Uzbekistan president to Egypt in light of the distinguished relations between the two countries. The roundtable witnessed participation of the Uzbek ambassador to Cairo, the businessmen and private sector companies in the field of data centers, medicines, renewable energy, and other industries. And Europe's main stock markets fell at the start of a trading on Tuesday following declines in Asia as Wall Street prepares to reopen after a long holiday weekend. London's benchmark FTSE 100 index was down 0.2%. In the Eurozone, Frankfurt's DAX index lost 0.2% and the Paris CAC 40 shed 0.1%. The Eurozone, Britain, France and US are all set to publish flash February PMI data, with market players watching for signs of the tighter monetary policy has taken on activity. In early trading, the Euro Stoxx 600 fell 0.2%, with major indexes in Germany, France and Britain opening slightly in the red. The data comes at a key time for equity markets, whose strong start to the year after a bruising 2022 has stalled in February. The MSCI World Equity Index, which tracks shares in 47 countries, fell 0.2%. U.S. markets closed on Monday due to President's Day holiday were set for slim losses. The Euro Mini futures for the S&P 500 were lost down 0.5%. Earlier, Asian stocks also said weighed down by the prospect of the U.S. Federal Reserve having staying on its hawkish path. The MSCI's broadcast index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan fell 0.9% to 529.97. It also fell under 6-week lows of 529.5 touched last week. Kicking off the round of PMIs was Japan, where manufacturing activity shrank at the fastest pace in 30 months in February, as the world's third largest economy faces weakening demand and struggling to tame cost pressures. Thousands of junior doctors in England have voted to take strike action next month, their trade union said, adding to a series of walkouts by nurses and ambulance workers, putting pressure on an already strained health system. The British Medical Association, BMA, which represents some 45,000 junior doctors in England, it said 98% of those taking part in a ballot had voted in favor of strike action, adding that they will stage a 72-hour walkout next month. Junior doctors agreed in 2019 to an annual 2% pay rise as part of a 4-year deal, but say that is now inadequate in light of much higher inflation. The BMA says junior doctors have suffered a more than 25% real terms pay cut since 2008, leaving many demoralized and 4 in 10 wanting to leave the profession, according to a recent survey. The strikes will heap more pressure over Britain's state-funded National Health Service, the NHS, which is already stretched by staff shortages and record backlogs, and now experiencing waves of disruptive strike action by health workers. The Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's government has argued that higher pay rises would only cause more inflation and interest rates and mortgages rates to go up further. More than 10,000 ambulance workers were on strike on Monday, while the nursing trade union last week announced a fresh 48-hour strike from March 1st. And now a closer look over the world of technology. A video of Earth scenes filmed by Chinese astronauts through windows of Tiantong Space Station was released by China Manned Space Agency, CMSA. The Tiantong Space Station completed the formation of the T-shaped structure on November 3rd last year, which lab modules Wantian and Mangtian on each side of the Tanya core module. The crew members of the Shenzhou 15 mission, the 4th crewed mission for the space station project, were sent into space on November 30th last year. During their 6-month stay in space, the 3 astronauts, Fei Jianlong, Deng Qinguang, and Zhang Lu, will carry out tests on long-term residence in the space station and its 3-module configuration. They also scheduled to unlock, install and test 15 scientific experiment cabinets and conduct more than 40 experiments and tests in the fields of space science research and application, space medicine and space technology. Welcome back, and a closer look over culture, where All Quiet on the Western Front, which was a big winner at this year's BAFTA Awards, tells the story of a young man who, poisoned by right-wing political nationalist propaganda, goes to war thinking it's an adventure, and war is anything but an adventure. This is one of the messages of Ramarke's seminal novel that seemed a relevant message even 100 years after the book was published.
A German remake of anti-war classic All Quiet on the Western Front was the big winner at the British Academy Film Awards, triumphing in the key categories at the ceremony seen as an indicator for next month's Oscars. Based on the 1928 novel by the German author Erich Maria Remarque about the horrors of World War I from the perspective of a young German soldier, the drama had led nominations with 14 nods, making it one of the most recognized films not in the English language in BAFTA's history. It won 7 awards overall: Best Film, Adapted Screenplay, Film Not in the English Language, Director for Edward Berger, Cinematography, Sound and Original Score. Austin Butler won the Leading Actor prize for his portrayal of Elvis Presley in Elvis. He thanked the Presley family in his acceptance speech. Kate Blanchett won the Leading Actress Prize for her portrayal of a conductor of a Berlin orchestra whose career comes tumbling down due to an abuse scandal. In Tar, an undertaking she described as very dangerous and career-ending potentially. Banshees, about two feuding friends on an island off the coast of Ireland, won Outstanding British Film, both supporting acting categories for Kerry Condon and Barry Keoghan, as well as the original screenplay. Navalny, about jailed Russian opposition politician Alexei Navalny, won the documentary category. Filmmakers dedicated the award to the Navalny family and the Bulgarian investigative journalist Christo Gorzev. The journalist, whom Russia put on a wanted list in December, said he'd been banned by British police from attending the BAFTAs for security reasons. In response, London police said they did not and could not ban anyone from attending the private event. Meanwhile, Sandy Powell became the first costume designer to gain the BAFTA fellowship, the highest honor bestowed by the Academy.
Welcome back, and for sports lovers, here is a closer look over the world of sports. In Egypt, Al Ahly beat Aswan 3-0 at the Aswan Stadium on Tuesday in the Egyptian Premier League 19th match day. The goals were scored by Mahmoud Kharaba in the 34th minute, Ahmed Abdel Qadir in the 41st minute, and Mohamed Magdi Afsha 3 minutes into the dead time in the first half. The Red Devils concreted their position on the top of the league table with 40 points, though they have 3 delayed games due to the participation in the Club World Cup. And Real Madrid finalized training preparations ahead of the Champions League last 16 first leg tie against Liverpool and Anfield. Earlier, Liverpool coach Jurgen Klopp conceded that he had not been able to bring himself to rewatch last season's Champions League final defeat by Real Madrid until past weekend, insisting reliving the experience was torture. The result of the first round of the match, it was an even draw for the Reds, and awaiting the second round. And that's it for all with our program Nile TV's Newsroom. Thank you very much for joining us, and stay with us on Nile TV for more coming up.